Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is Disney and Lucasfilm's current focus as of right now. Apart from that, they're also working on various other projects for Disney Plus and even the new Star Wars Trilogy. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, obviously, The Rise of Skywalker is a very important movie by Disney and Lucasfilm because this movie is going to determine the future of the franchise and exactly how Disney will handle Star Wars. We do know that Disney has a plan as of right now to reset the Star Wars franchise, and essentially what that means is that after Episode 9, they will be handling the franchise in a different way, not only by having Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni on board, watching over all of the different Star Wars projects and having a say in the matter, but also by having new producers, different directors, more experienced directors I must add, and writers that will be a part of future Star Wars material. Now, with that being said, a lot of fans are very much intrigued about everything after Episode 9, not just with Disney Plus, but also for the new Star Wars Trilogy, and the first film of the new trilogy that is actually codenamed Star Wars X, which essentially means Star Wars Episode 10. Now, what's really intriguing about all of this is that, of course, it's explained that Disney and Lucasfilm are currently focused on The Rise of Skywalker, their live-action TV series on Disney Plus, and also the brand new Star Wars Trilogy that will take Star Wars in a different direction. It's explained that Kathleen Kennedy will have minimal involvement with the new film, and that she will only be prepping the formation of the first film and the new trilogy that is known as Star Wars X. It's explained that Disney wants somebody else to act as producer of all three new Star Wars films, and that each film will have a mapped out plan of course, exactly who will be actually writing and directing it and exactly how the story will flow, starting off with Star Wars X. Now, Keanu Reeves is said to be in the talks to portray a villain in the upcoming film, and that they are trying to figure out the scheduling around Keanu's upcoming projects that he's actually currently working on. Now, what's really intriguing is that it's said that also Anthony Hopkins and Tom Hardy are also in the talks to portray key characters in Star Wars X, and that Disney and Lucasfilm are looking to stay with the Roman numeral tradition, where Star Wars X would mean Star Wars Episode 10, and that they are looking into making the first film of the new trilogy based in the Old Republic era. One of the pitched ideas between Disney and Lucasfilm is that each film of the trilogy would jump throughout the ages, exploring different character stories that actually directly tie into other ones as well. That Star Wars X would actually kickstart the new Star Wars universe that would emulate the MCU. It's said that Star Wars X is also going to have a far higher budget than that of The Rise of Skywalker's, and that George Lucas will also watch over the pre-production process of the film that includes the writing of the script, the concept art, and the building of the sets that Disney plans to do in 2021 before they begin filming. Star Wars X is also said to involve next-generation CGI that would redefine how CGI is done in the films, and that Disney and Lucasfilm plan to make these films longer than the Skywalker saga movies. Star Wars X is also said to have a light connection to the Skywalker saga, however will remain separate from the saga itself so that it remains as its own mythology and new take on the franchise in a different time. It's said that Kathleen Kennedy already has a director for Star Wars X, and that will be announced this January, where story details of the film are set to be revealed in August of 2020 next year at Star Wars Celebration. So let's go over a couple of parts about this. I think the most exciting thing out of all of this is how Kathleen Kennedy is going to have minimal involvement with Star Wars X, the first film, by the way, of the new trilogy. Now, the thing that's so great about this is that I think it's pretty safe to say that a lot of you will agree with me on this, is that Kathleen Kennedy really isn't great at leadership when she has to run Star Wars, leading Lucasfilm as president of the company and really making these Star Wars movies. It really seems like that everything has been so out of place, inconsistent with the pre-production process of each and every movie. All these different creatives getting fired, leaving the projects, or, Kathleen Kennedy having a poor judgment of specific writers and creatives that could create Star Wars films. When we look at Kathleen Kennedy, right, we do know that these movies really do determine the future of the franchise, the Skywalker saga films, especially Episode 9, and exactly how things are really going to move forward. So how she's going to have minimal involvement with the first film in the new trilogy is the best news possible here. The other thing is Keanu Reeves, they're still working around with him getting on board to portray a villain in the key role of Episode 10 or whatever, Star Wars X. What's really interesting about that is that, of course, they're also trying to keep the Roman numeral tradition in, of course, the new Star Wars trilogy. Now, obviously, I think that's not going to make a lot of sense to some fans out there, since they are looking to make these movies based around the Old Republic era or Knights of the Old Republic era, which wouldn't make all that much sense if it's based in the past and you're calling it 10, 11, and 12. Now, obviously, this is in the very early stages. That could very well be why they're calling it Star Wars X, and as to why they want to stick with the Roman numeral format. But with that being said, I think what's also very exciting about this is how George Lucas is going to watch over the pre-production process of the first film of the new trilogy, Star Wars X. In that sense, basically, they're going to stay true to George Lucas and his vision of exactly what the new mythology of Star Wars would really be like after the Skywalker saga. Now, we've heard nothing about Rian Johnson's new Star Wars films, and of course, a lot of fans are still wondering what in the world is going on with Rian Johnson's trilogy, where is that going? It really seems like that trilogy is up in the air. We don't know if he's fired, we don't know if they let him go, or if his trilogy is still happening. It really seems like it's a back and forth scenario where, there's different stories all the time surrounding Rian Johnson. Ever since David Benioff and D.B. Weiss actually exited the new Star Wars trilogy, by the way, I think that was the best move possible. I think that there was a big cover-up there. They claimed that it was because they wanted to focus more on their Netflix deal, and they couldn't do that with Star Wars in the way. I really do believe that it all had to do with the backlash of Season 8 of Game of Thrones. Without a doubt, a lot of Star Wars fans were really projecting a lot of criticism of having them on board for a new Star Wars trilogy and being very afraid of exactly how the future would be handled by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. And I don't blame everybody out there, because Game of Thrones Season 8, it did have a lot of problems, a lot of fans had issues with it, and you can only imagine, what would have really happened with the new Star Wars movies and how it would have really ended with, of course, the last film of that new trilogy. So, given that they exited and how Kathleen Kennedy is going to announce a brand new director for the first film of the new trilogy this January, alright? So January of 2020, we're going to learn exactly who's going to be the brand new director for the first film of the new trilogy. Keep in mind that they're only going to be choosing well-known directors for these new Star Wars films. They want to have well-known directors and writers on board for these new Star Wars movies, as well as throwing in A-list actors that will actually be a part of the main cast of Episode 9. Great example is that they're in talks with Anthony Hopkins and Tom Hardy to portray key roles in the first film in the new trilogy. Anthony Hopkins, let me say one thing here. Excellent actor, legendary actor. If you guys have seen him in movies like, Silence of the Lambs or the Westworld TV show, he does an excellent job, and I can really see him as, let's say, for example, Valkorion in the Star Wars series, if it is going to be based within, Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic material, etc. So, with that being said, these movies do have potential to bring Star Wars in a different direction. Given that Disney and Lucasfilm will be handling these Star Wars films in a different way, drastically, than how they handled the sequel trilogy, I think that what they're really trying to do now is that they're really trying to bring Star Wars in a different tone, if you will. Obviously, these new movies are going to be catered to hardcore fans and are going to be more adult-centric, if you will. It's going to be more adult-themed, if you will. More violent for a Star Wars film, which only leads me to believe that it is indeed going to be more like with what we saw in the Old Republic cutscenes, where you have like dozens upon dozens of Sith fighting dozens upon dozens of Jedi and stuff around those lines. Obviously, we do know that they are basing these movies off of Lord of the Rings, so that makes a lot of sense as well. It's going to have the tone of those movies, so that's one thing about this. But anyways, guys, I would really love to hear what you all have to say about Star Wars X and the beginning of this new trilogy that is currently in early development and is going to really make its way throughout development even more so in 2020. So anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.